Hi, I'm Eric Bernhardsson. I'm the CEO of Modal. I'm here today because the team at Ramp recently published a very cool blog post about how they built their own background agent called Inspect.
Hi, my name's Zach. I'm one of our engineers here at Ramp, and I work on our background coding agent called Inspect. It's what's powering right now about 40% of our merge pull requests. It's a project we've been working on for the past few months, and we're super excited to chat about it.
Hi, I'm Rahul. I lead the Applied AI team at Ramp.
Yeah, so tell me about Inspect. Why did you decide to build your own background agents? There's obviously a lot of projects out there you could have used off the shelf, but you decided to build your own. So I'm super interested in what made you decide to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the reason we wanted to build this ourselves is that in a world where this is critical infrastructure for all of our, AI is such critical infrastructure, it really wanted to make sure that we customize it for just what Ramp needs to be able to enable its builders to be the most effective. I think for us, the thing that was really crucial is that we wanted to be integrated into all of the tooling that we have, both internal and third party. So what's really great here is that by building it ourselves, we aren't thinking about what's the integration story of how do we make our things work with a third party, but we actually control it end to end. We're able to really customize the responses, that it gets, and we're able to make sure that the data that we're putting in is just very specific. And so when we think about should other companies be doing this, I think it's very valuable because it didn't take us that much time to stand this up.
Really?
The first version of this that was our own API that was running the coding agent really only took me a few days to get a first prototype off the ground.
Yeah.
And then from there, it's just the customization and really tweaking the UX to make it a powerful tool for not just our engineers, but all of our builders at Ramp.
Yeah.
So I think it's something that a lot of companies should consider investing
Yeah.
in if they really want to buy in on AI being the future of building software.
Was it a crazy hack project or total moonshot? Or was it something you decided, we're gonna sit down, spend 3 months building this?
Definitely was more of a moonshot. This was something that myself and Rahul and a couple other of our engineers were building a little bit more in our free time. But as we kept iterating on it, it was something that we kind of saw this is where all this industry is going, and we should keep investing. And we just kind of kept iterating on it and became more and more of our time until now, you mentioned, it's about 40% of our merge pull requests
Which is
are
insane,
through.
by the way.
Yeah,
It's kind of crazy.
it's insane for us too. Yeah.
It's not. When did you realize how powerful this was gonna be?
It's one of those things where I think we really realized it once we started seeing the proof of it. And it was one of those things where we kept building out the different clients that we have. We mentioned that, we have, not just the typical kind of chat interface that's through a website, but also we have our Slack interface and our Chrome extension. And it was really about putting these tools where builders live that caused it to grow very quickly inside of Ramp.
And who were the first users? What did they say when you put it in front of them?
Yeah, I mean,
Were they blown away?
Yeah, I think I think some people were definitely also very excited, especially on the non-engineering builder side. Thinking your product managers and your designers. It's one of those things where they obviously had access to Claude Code and all this different type of tooling, but we really wanted to make sure that it was accessible. And so part of this is that there is no local setup required. It's very much you send it a prompt. We spin up the sandbox and the container for them with all the dependencies installed that gives them the exact same developer setup that an engineer would have locally. But it's spun up in seconds and they don't have to think about that. So for them, it really enabled them to work much more efficiently.
Yeah. So this is obviously a challenging thing to build, and maybe took a lot of time to figure out all the pieces of this. Let's talk about the infrastructure. How did you, you're obviously using Modal. Maybe you can talk a bit about what role does Modal play in this? You're using Sandboxes, so how were you able to work with Modal and put the Ramp code inside Sandboxes, and how does that work?
Do you want to take that?
You can take this one, actually.
Yeah, I think, so the piece that Modal plays for us is that it runs, the actual coding agent itself inside of the sandbox.
Yeah.
And what was really key for us here is the performance. like I mentioned, we want this to be like equalizing the playing field for all of our builders at Ramp. And it obviously would be bad if it was like, oh, it takes like 5 minutes for it to spin up just to start, when like we really want this to be something that accelerates our builders. And so with Modal, it's great because these sandboxes containers, they like start in seconds. And then also there's a bunch of primitives here that allow us to do a bunch of the work. Like
you're
in
using
advance.
snapshots, right?
Exactly. We're using the file snapshot. So what we do is that every 30 minutes, we're actually like cloning all of our repositories and then like installing all the dependencies, like getting them into like a ready to go state for the coding agent. And then when someone sends a prompt, we just grab the last snapshot that we took. And the great part of like this whole reason we do it every 30 minutes is because then when it needs to synchronize like the latest commits, like from Git, for example, we're not pulling an entire repository. You know, we're only pulling like the last like 30 minutes of changes, which tends to be much quicker than like downloading it all for the first time. So because of that, it like end to end, like it usually gets started on a request in 10 seconds or less.
Cool.
We use functions, snapshots, dicts, and modal queues as well. So pretty much the entire Modal AI.
Nice. Would love to understand a little bit, like, how did you get started with Modal? Like, what was the experience bringing it in? What was the onboarding? And how did it spread in the team?
Yeah, for us, it was just a matter of getting a machine up with all our stuff as soon as possible. And there's really no other solution on the market that we can do that with.
As you think maybe about other companies who want to build something similar, like what are the things that you found really useful with Modal or maybe with other vendors? And how should companies combine these primitives and build these really cool AI applications?
Absolutely. So for us, the biggest goal was to match the experience of running a local agent. And beating a local agent is pretty hard because a lot of the time the user already has the repo set up, they have all the code downloaded, there may be just a few commits off from master, they're probably already logged into all their applications, their page cache is warm, and the service is already up probably. And so the local agent has a significant advantage of just being able to edit the files and test the changes and be able to push it, which is why I think the current generation of local agents have been insanely popular and background agents have always taken a back seat. But there's no real reason why this should be true. And we've tried to design Inspect to not have this disadvantage. And Modal helps us with this because we make use of the snapshots heavily. We bake new snapshots every 30 minutes, again with the Modal cron job, with a Modal function running on a cron job. And again, we set up all the secrets, skills, and tools required for the agent to kick off as if it was been running on a user's computer, except on the cloud, effectively giving every builder at Ramp like hundreds of computers that they can work on simultaneously.
That's super cool. So you actually pointed out an interesting thing, which is that you talked about how Claude Code typically runs locally. How do you think about background agents, and maybe there's like sort of an evolution towards the cloud and running more things in the cloud? Do you think that's where background agents are going?
Yeah, I think agents are just going to get smarter. They're going to get better in the ways that they've been getting better at. And because of this, a computer is going to be limiting, and it's not unlikely that very soon we'll have agents be able to pretty much like almost every PR they put up is going to be correct. And so at that point, it's all about how many PRs you can get out as opposed to like if you're single threading on a computer.
Right, and that multi-threading aspect, right, I think is really interesting, right? Because I think with Inspect, you're not just firing up like one agent, right? Like you're running a bunch of stuff in parallel, is that right?
That's right, yeah. So Inspect can actually spin up child sessions. So if you ask Inspect to do maybe multiple things, it can decide to copy itself and make itself work on different things and put up multiple PRs.
That's very cool. How does it clone itself? So you have one session that basically runs in a Modal Sandbox, right? And it can basically decide to clone that sandbox. Is that right?
Do you want to take this one?
Yeah, the idea is that because we have all these images already built in Modal, if we want to work across different repositories, we've just given Inspect itself a tool that spawns another Inspect session in the same way like when you start it, right? So the idea here is that like it knows that it's working inside of Inspect in the system, so it's able to just be like, okay, this would actually be more helpful if you can get it in parallel. And I really think that parallelization is key because it's like when we think about how software or development teams have worked today. We obviously work in parallel. There's, you have teams with multiple people on them. And so I think it only makes sense that in a future that it's also like agentic for development, that it has the same ability to be parallelized. And, to Rahul's point around the, where it becomes limiting to just be on like one local computer, because of the setup needed to like run multiple things in parallel. It's great when we're able to push things out to the cloud or whatever you may call it to allow for like this true like parallelization of work.
Yeah. And what's the impact at Ramp? I think you talked about 30% of all PRs are now, in the blog post you mentioned 30% of all PRs are now being written by Inspect. Is that number going up or?
It's up and to the right. We're like really excited about like the growth here. Obviously, yeah, we're like in the past week we've seen about like 40% of yeah, exactly.
Nice.
Yeah, it's really exciting. Like about 40% of merged pull requests are started by Inspect. And many of them are going in by like human like intervention, aside from just like the code review part, to ensure that it still is like meeting our bar for like quality and stability. But I think the other impact that we're really excited about is that we're also getting non-engineering builders into the conversation.
Yeah.
We are seeing like product managers starting to be able to like ship like smaller features, and like designers who are able to make the like tweaks, especially when it's like, oh, we need to just like tighten things up or whatever. And I think what's really impactful about this is that it frees up our engineers to continue to work on these, like larger features that require like more of like the current like engineering insight. But as these models and tooling continue to get better, we see it as it's going to continue to enable like a very like broad type of builder. I'm personally is very excited about that because I think it just really unlocks the product development lifecycle.
Do you think it's going to go to 100% eventually? Is that the goal?
We'd love to see obviously more adoption, like selfishly, but I think it's something where like, yeah, we absolutely want to make sure this is the best tooling for our builders to be able to work with AI.
Yeah, in a world where you get to 80, 90, 100%, like what do software engineers do that day?
I think it really becomes where we're considering what builders look like, and it's like there's very much like a generalist role that is able to traverse the obviously like the engineering requirements, but also thinking about the product requirements and design requirements, and then you're using like the AI as an additional aid for the areas that you're not as familiar with, and so it's like. When I say this, it's like this is a lot of what we look for at Ramp today. We very much hire people who want to get things done, who are just builders at heart. And so it's like this is also I think why we've seen a lot of the success at Ramp is because we're also like already starting to think about that type of role.
Nice. Can you talk a little bit about, obviously with agents writing code, it's different than humans writing code. Like what are some of the ways that agents interact with code that are different than maybe how humans would interact with code?
Yeah, I think one of the key pieces that like it's just like a learning curve for everybody is like the code that a lot of these like agentic tools write is different than how humans would write it, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's worse. It is just like different, and it's very much becoming like accepting that we want to make sure we have a code base that is amenable to an agent being able to like work in it very well, and so it's like letting go of some of our like previous biases towards what makes code like great for humans and making sure that we're actually again like leveling this playing field and like humans and agents can work within it.
Nice, awesome. And Ramp is obviously a company that does a lot of really cool AI stuff. I think you've been very public about that. I mentioned Ramp Sheets and many other things. Like, how should the average company think about that? There's a lot of companies out there, maybe they're reading the blog post, maybe they're thinking we should do something similar. Should they do that? And then, when they do that, how should they think about, building the teams and what infrastructure they should use?
Absolutely. I think model capabilities are growing very quickly, and I think the level of ambition that people have and what they're building is maybe not catching up quite yet. Every few months there will be a new model that maybe we'll be able to one-shot a more complex PR or a bigger feature, eventually maybe a fuller app. And because of that, you're also able to increase the ceiling of what you want to try to do. So I guess my advice would just be fearless and go try it and see what happens.
Yeah, and do you
go try it again every like couple months.
Yeah.
I just personally find this space like very exciting. I think absolutely it's like people should try, and I think they should build the best tools for them.
Like what's next for Inspect?
The things I think we're really thinking about internally at Ramp with Inspect are like how do we continue to integrate into like the full product development lifecycle, making sure that it's like truly able to run all the pieces end to end. It can like work natively across multiple repositories and really verify its work. And then making sure that it is a tool that is very flexible for all of our builders, and also it's starting to enable people like outside of our builders org, even for things just like asking questions about how ramp works. I see it's like the code is the source of truth for so much of this. So giving them access to be able to like ask questions, and it becomes like the code becomes part of the documentation itself in like a very like user-friendly way. I think the main thing that I think Rahul touched on is just like this is stuff that's like it's very much worth trying, and I think this is something that we also tell all of our like all the team at Ramp is just like it's key to like try things. And like one of the great pieces about AI is that like you are able to try a lot of things very quickly at like very little risk. And so it's just like stop asking the questions of like, well, can it do this, and see if it can, and then like identify the gaps where it truly cannot because it doesn't have access to something or whatever, and then like make those pieces happen and like build it the primitives that you need so that it can do the things that you want it to do. And so it's just like go and like try things and just like move quickly on this stuff because it's changing rapidly.
How far are we from inspect building, one-shotting all of Ramp?
Yeah, I think it's super important. I think a lot of background agents or coding agents in general only do about 50% of the work. And even though writing the code is hard, there's also a lot of work on the reviewer to read the code, verify correctness, maybe actually have to click through and test it out. Maybe if it's a front-end change, actually look at what it looks like. A back-end change, maybe a detailed integration or unit testing. And we've really tried to make sure that Inspect can do this as much of this work as possible, so that when it puts up a PR, all you need to do is like maybe take a glance at it and then click the green button to merge it. For this, obviously, we need effectively Ramp in a box. We need to be able to spin it up at will, quickly, and we've been able to do that with Modal.
Tell me about the process of building Inspect. Do you think Inspect would have been possible to build just 3 years ago?
I mean, definitely not 3 years ago, with infrastructure and like models that existed like then, but it's something that, is definitely possible today. This actually happened to be like my first time using Modal, and it's like I'm more of like a front-end engineer by trade, but I was able to like get started really quickly because all the primitives, are just like very well explained, and it just like is very easy to like iterate with what Modal has. And I think when we even look at the infrastructure 3 years ago, 5 years ago, like this is very different landscape.
Yeah, and the models.
Yeah, and the models too. Obviously, the AI definitely helped build Inspect and continues to. But I think that's like really exciting for us. It's like it was a tool that we already had in our sandbox, and we were able to use Modal to like really accelerate the development process for Inspect.
That's awesome. Are you using Inspect to build Inspect, by the way?
Yeah, that's like, what are we at there? Like probably like 80% of pull requests to Inspect are written by Inspect. Yeah.
So it's like a recursion, self-improving.
Yeah. It certainly helps us like iterate a lot faster on like a lot of the ideas that we have, and especially since we're building it for an internal audience. We have a lot of people who are willing to work with it when it's like slightly rougher edges, and then we can like polish it out with the team at Ramp.
Well, it would have been really hard to build Inspect without Modal in the current form. I think on everything on top, I think was probably Modal made it a lot easier. We didn't have to worry about all the infrastructure earlier, and I think a lot of complexities being hidden behind just being able to spin up sandboxes very quickly with a lot of services and a lot of data, and effectively have like infinite of them spin up at any given time. So Modal does a lot of the heavy lifting, and this also is true for a lot of our other projects that we're building off of Modal. So we're super excited about continuing to use it. I think one other thing I wanted to highlight is obviously coding agents improve coding productivity, but I think the benefits are not evenly distributed. So for a large code base with like maybe legacy abstractions that are not in the pre-training data, and maybe slightly older libraries or more obscure libraries, maybe written in like non-standard frameworks and languages, obviously still improves productivity, but not as much as a small new code base, which maybe fits more of the code and abstractions in context, uses off-the-shelf tools so the model can rely on the pre-training data as well. I think the amount of benefit is like extremely unevenly distributed, and that's why I think we're seeing 80% on a much smaller Inspect code base and 40% on like the larger Ramp app, and we're working on ways to make that happen as well in the larger app to see how we can benefit more from the coding agent.
Nice. How does that change coding going forward when AIs are good at certain libraries but not other libraries? Do you think it changes to maybe how you're choosing libraries or choosing frameworks? And
I don't think we should really like index on that too much. I think we're right at the point where this is the problem, but models are going to continue to get better. And I think it is already crazy that a matrix can understand how to use Tailwind, and there's no reason why the matrix will not be able to understand like some internal component library written on like in like raw CSS as well.
Yeah. And like for us, it's really like, it's like, for example, Ramp does have its own like internal design system, and this is a key portion for us to get right, where like we gave it like access to a lot of context about like how it works, and like we like are able to feed it also like examples, and like give it like a lot of instructions of like, this is how it's like works as like on a primitives level, these are like patterns that you should avoid or not. And it's really to a point of like writing documentation, and however you choose to expose it, whether you're like MCPs or skills or whatever, kind of like constructs around it, it's all still like documentation that is written for an agent to understand, and really making sure that's direct and that it's like clearly guiding these models to be able to work productively.
And maybe it's not too different to writing documentation for users, internal, like humans too, right?
I really do think, it's like so much of this, it's like, this is what's finally getting engineers to write documentation, right? Making sure that it has context on, everything that like your team does. And so it's against removing the information silos. And I think it has a great benefit of like, not only does it make it better for AI, but also makes it better for the humans who are working on it too. And I think it's just as like, you can start to like more evenly distribute the like the benefits by really like investing in making sure that the information isn't siloed.
Yeah, thanks a lot. This is awesome. Super interesting to hear what you're building at Ramp, and looking forward to see what's going to happen with Inspect.
Yeah, no, thanks for having us. We're super excited to chat.